Welcome everyone to the first of two virtual presentations by Swords to Plowshares to learn ways to support veterans as they enter college through graduation. Today's presentation, Succeed Before You Start, is directed to veterans and offers peer-based advice on making it through school, focusing on financial health, maintaining stable housing, and ensuring overall wellness. And today's presentation goes hand in hand with next week's presentation on July 16th, which provides guidance for campus professionals, student services, administrators, and faculty to respond to the needs of student veterans on their campuses. So we hope that you'll join us for both. A little bit of housekeeping: you will be in listen-only mode, so if it's not already set up, please turn off your video and mute yourself. You can also ask a question to our presenter at any time using the chat, which is located to the right of your webinar's display. You could also see it at the bottom of your screen as well. We will do our best to get through questions and hopefully create a good discussion in the short time we have with you today. Our presenter is Victor Inzunza, a Marine Corps veteran and OIF veteran, policy analyst at Swords to Plowshares. Victor has led much of our research, outreach, engagement on student veterans, and is also able to speak on his experiences during college. So welcome, Victor.
Thanks for the introduction, Megan. So I wanted to start this off by just thanking all of you for being here in attendance today. I know it's been a difficult few months for everyone, so I hope you're all safe and healthy. I hope your families are doing well. So today we're going to talk about tips for our student veterans. So one of the things that I found difficult when I started college was that it can be hard to really acquaint yourself with campus life, services on campus. You kind of have a period of time where you're adjusting and trying to learn who you should talk to about certain things. So we're going to cover a lot of that, and one of the things to remember here is that everything that we're talking about here is informed by student veterans themselves. So this isn't just researchers telling you what's best for veterans. We have done this research for quite a while. We do have veterans on staff like myself, so I think we have a good balance, as well as our civilian researchers. Everybody is well informed. Our director and assistant director have been working in this field much longer than I have, so they have a really good grasp on what veterans need. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. We'll be talking about debt as well as transition also. So let's get started. So again, this is me, of course, Victor Inzunza, policy analyst. I came to Swords quite a while ago. I'm coming up on my 4-year anniversary with Swords to Plowshares. I think Swords to Plowshares is a really great institution for veterans. They've done a lot of great work here locally in San Francisco, but one thing that people don't necessarily know is that we've also had a lot of influence nationally as far as policy changes and activism and things like that. So it's something to know. We're here for veterans really, all over the place, but certainly in the Bay Area, we have more direct contact. So these are some things we're going to cover. It's really important to kind of have a plan. I think that there's no fault in this. When I was just out of the military, I was right around 25, and it was a difficult time for me. I came back to my hometown, and so the idea of having a plan around education wasn't something that I was really focused on. I just wanted to get back into school. So one of the things that we want to try to provide to student veterans with this presentation is we want to kind of give them a nudge and say, look, you've got several years in college. Many of you are going to get your bachelor's degree and go on to a more advanced degree. And so you really got to spread that money out that you have through the GI Bill. It's a great benefit, but we've definitely got to learn how to maximize it. Another thing, like I said earlier, getting acquainted with resources on campus, finding your advocates. And this is one thing that I've always tried to tell people. Find out those people that are going to be in your corner. We're very lucky, I think, in this current time. A lot of things on campuses have changed. A lot of staff, faculty, and administrators have become more aware of student veterans and their needs. So we're starting to see a shift there. I can say that I've observed this personally because back when I started school, roughly around 2005 timeframe, there were no VRCs anywhere. I had never heard of a VRC, so a Veteran Resource Center, not something that was on campuses when I was there. But that started to shift, and one of the great things is with doing this research, I've got to visit a lot of campuses and see that there are communities on campus who are really developing those resources for veterans. Veterans are coming together on their own, advocating for themselves, and so these things are really starting to grow. Another kind of area of focus that we want to talk about that maybe doesn't get as much attention as it deserves is finances. So coming out of the military, you may not be well established as far as savings and things like that, but one of the important things to do early on is think about how you're going to survive college, how you're going to pay for your rent, how you're going to find time to work if you have to, how you're going to avoid taking on any additional debts so that you don't have all that stress. So the limitations of the GI Bill, they are real. One of the things that we've discovered, and many advocates in this arena, as far as education and the GI Bill are concerned, have fought pretty hard. I know we have, to make some big changes to make GI Bill more robust. There are a lot of factors that don't necessarily get considered by policymakers. I'm not by any means trying to denigrate their efforts. Of course, they're doing the best that they can to make good policy and to hope that they're taking care of veterans. However, the complexity involved in how veterans use their GI Bill benefits and how they survive through college is much more challenging than we think. So these are some things we want you to consider. So realize that your benefits, just by themselves are not necessarily enough to get you through school. One of the great things that we do get from the GI Bill is that we do get BAH, so that housing allowance can definitely help to supplement any housing costs that you may have. For us in the Bay Area, that can be a really significant challenge because when we were doing our research, we were up against this problem talking to students, and one of the main complaints was that the BH is great and everything, but the reality is in this market it's just not enough. And housing is only one component of your overall expenses. A lot of our veterans have families that they have to support, and that can be more than one child. It can be a wife, a husband, or something like that. So those can always kind of contribute to some of the stresses that you have. You're wondering how you're going to take care of your family, and more importantly, you want to finish school. So that can push people into taking on part-time employment, which in and of itself is a big challenge as far as completing your schoolwork and then having to show up for work after you're done with your classes. So all those things can really factor in and make things a little bit more difficult. So just trying to kind of dispel the mythology around this. So people who aren't necessarily familiar with the GI Bill, aren't really acquainted with it, they kind of assume that, well, if they have the GI Bill, they're 100% covered for college. Everything is taken care of as far as their basic needs. So housing, medical, books, what have you, all these kinds of things. But the reality is that in a lot of cases, it only covers a portion. And there are variances between service, so active duty, reserve, National Guard components may get a different level of benefits. Again, here's another myth. So the idea that all veterans receive educational benefits. So this is not necessarily the case. There are veterans who may have a different type of discharge. So if they have a general or something lower than that, they're not going to get their educational benefits. So perhaps they're trying to better themselves. They had a rough road in the military and they want to get into college and try to make things better for themselves. Well, they're not going to get that GI Bill. So that's just one thing to consider. So keep that in mind. Using the GI Bill is a simple and automatic process. This is clearly not the truth here. I know that many veterans that I know myself, and this story continues. The process of getting your benefits, applying and all of that, it can be rather complicated. During the time that I was in college, there was a severe backlog on benefits being issued. So there can be a number of administrative difficulties, informational difficulties. So folks might not necessarily have the right information on how they apply and who they go to talk to get that done. So I kind of said this earlier. A lot of this is peer advice. This is from veterans. We always try to do our best to include veterans in our research. Certainly there are research participants, but more than that, we like to keep them engaged after if we can, but also we stress the importance of having their point of view. I think that that's more important than the research, in and of itself. Research is helpful, it informs people, but we want veterans who participate and help us with our research to feel included, that they're really contributing to something that's going to help other veterans. So part of this, we have a toolkit we can make available to you. So we have your emails. We'll make sure that we distribute that as soon as we can. Some of the things that we did, we had a survey portion to help kind of gather basic information, find out what some of the challenges these veterans were facing were. And then we did have a more collaborative, approach as well, where we sat down with veterans and basically just asked them, what would you like to see in the GI Bill? Are there changes that you think you need? What are some things you'd like to see on campus? What's helped you? What has been the best resource that you've had? So all of these kinds of questions, because ultimately we want to share this with their peers so that they're able to use the same information. This body of information is growing all the time. And like I said, I've personally seen it change over the last decade quite a bit. And we want to continue to see that growth and see that veterans are being taken care of on campus, that they're connecting with each other, that the stressors that they may experience are able to be addressed in some way, and that they're leaning on each other when they need help, right? So this is kind of a preview, some of the things that vets really wanted other veterans to know, like what can you anticipate? So there's always someone coming behind you, and that's kind of a way to look at it, right? And so I know many folks in the military, it's been about, during their time in service, always make it better for the person coming behind you, right? So whatever changes we make, how small or how big is not necessarily important. We want to make sure that we're able to help other veterans avoid problems and also just improve their experience as much as we can. So a couple of things to consider as well. What you want to do really, the main, if I could tell you to take away something from this entire presentation, it's plan ahead. It's very simple. You never know what kind of challenges you're going to come up against. So just a few, when we talk about financial aid and GI Bill payments, we can't necessarily count on them being 100% on time. The world just doesn't work that way. Like I said before, there's always administrative concerns, but you want to try to balance out your budget and think ahead, just in the event that something does go wrong. So for example, you're expecting your financial aid payment at the end of the month, right before your rent's due, and you don't get it, right? And then you get your GI Bill payment, but it's still not enough to cover the rent. So things like that do happen. So something like this can be avoided if you have a savings plan, or if you've been balancing your budget and you've already got some kind of plan in case something bad happens. Additionally, veteran education benefits, they're not going to necessarily cover the full cost of school. And so, I think that kind of diversifying your funding sources, okay, while you're in school is important. So there's tons of grants out there, okay, there's tons of scholarships. And the problem with that is that most people just don't apply, especially for veterans. If you go out on the internet, a quick search, I tell you what, you'll find so many scholarships out there for veterans. And it's really great that people are willing to help veterans out in that way. So take advantage of those kinds of things. Having that GI Bill is a great foundation for you. Don't be afraid to take out financial aid if you really need it. But like I said earlier, you want to try to avoid debts if you can. We're going to talk more about that later, but ultimately you want to try to, in the best scenario, get out of college debt free. All right. So gap months, as we've called them previously, if you look at winter, summer months and things like that, so holidays when school's already on break, right? So these kind of things can affect veterans in a really significant way. And so again, this is where I'm kind of looking ahead a bit. It's really important to start thinking about those breaks, right? So we'd like to see all veterans being covered year round, despite the breaks in school. It's not something they can avoid. Those breaks are always going to be there. The real issue being that your rent is continuous. So no matter whether your school is taking a break for the winter or the summer, it's not really helpful during those times for veterans to have to dig deeper into their pockets. That can be a real challenge. Sometimes you can't save. It's not always an option. If your expenses are rather high, like I said previously, if you have family and you have other responsibilities, those things can factor in as well. So the best you can do at this point is to plan for this. Hopefully, as a community, we're able to kind of bring this to the attention of the right people, and hopefully they'll make that change so that this is something you don't have to worry about anymore. Some of our veterans also said this is something that we hadn't really heard about a whole lot before, but commutes do take a toll. So, in most larger urban, cities, there are, several tolls that you have to pay to get over a bridge, things like that. Getting on the bus, here, getting on BART, parking, I mean, you name it, it's an expense, right? And so throughout the year, if you're going to classes and things like that, you're going to have to, pay some money out of pocket for commuting expenses, especially with a lot of veterans living outside of the areas where they're going to school. So if people are commuting, you can anticipate, costs for gas, insurance, car, all of those things are big expenses. I think that those are significant. So something to consider. And again, a lot of the reason why people get pushed out a little bit further is because of the fact that the living areas are much more affordable. If you live in a smaller city, further away from a large city, typically the rents are a lot lower. And so that can be appealing, and, understandably, if you're on a limited budget, that's the kind of thing that you're going to have to do, right? There's not a lot of choice in that matter. The GI Bill does not have a provision for commuting. So this is one of the other challenges that might be a problem. So again, this has to deal with the complexity that I described previously. So when folks, who are in Congress, the Senate, aren't necessarily familiar with a lot of these smaller expenses, which can lead to a larger expense over time, that's not a provision that they're going to include. Additionally, I mean, just driving back and forth, depending on how far even, can make it a lot worse. You would hope, ideally, students would just be able to focus on their education and limit their stressors, but again, sometimes that's just not possible.
Hey, Victor, we have a couple of questions that came in that are relevant right now, if you want to address them. One is, how significant is the winter and summer break challenge? And the other is there a list or website that can be referenced for scholarships for veterans?
So I'll answer the last one first. So as far as a specific, scholarship website for veterans, I don't have one off the top of my hand. That's something or off the top of my head rather. That's something I can look up and share. I know when I looked it up, I just did a general search, and so even with just a general search, you're going to get a lot of hits, and you can pursue it that way. So there's a lot of those out there. So for the gap months, I mean, really, it's a significant enough burden on people. For example, let's say before the winter break, you only have 2 weeks, right, where you're actually finishing up school, so you're not getting paid for the full month. So if you don't get that full month's pay, and this is kind of in both situations with winter and summer breaks. If you're not in school for the entire summer, then you're not gonna have money for the rent. So you have to find a way to supplement that, and that usually means you're going to have to save somehow, to prepare for that. Or some folks will make sure that they're working during that period. But there's two kind of things to consider here. Finding work during those periods can be very challenging, so that's one of the problems. The other thing is, like we said before, I mean, you can't go to your landlord and say, I'm not getting any funds right now, so I can't pay the full rent. It just doesn't work that way. It's not going to be a conversation you can have. Also, one of the things that happens as a kind of byproduct of this is that student veterans are kind of forced into taking summer classes, which are, I think, as most people know, if you've taken a summer class, much more rigorous, time-consuming, and much more stressful. So if they're forced to take those summer classes, then they're going to be in a situation where they're putting themselves in additional stress. And even beyond that, I remember when I was in college and I had to take summer classes, they didn't give you the full amount even then. So even if you were taking classes, you still got somewhat less BAH than you normally would. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, and we also have a couple people dropped some links to some websites that have large lists. And also someone noted that campuses have lists of scholarships on their websites or in their financial aid offices. We also have in our toolkit a couple of links to resources on scholarships as well. So we'll email that out.
Great. Okay, so keep moving forward here. And, like I said before, maximizing your GI Bill is really about planning. You want to think about what you really want to do. Sometimes it's hard to figure that out. Like, you may not know right away that you want to go to grad school. You may not know right away what your area of study is that you want to do, what kind of career you want to take, whatever path that might be. So, and do your best to find a way to get this information. Find a good career counselor or something on campus who can talk you through this. Pay attention to your interests, and I always recommend that people do what they really want to do. You really only get one shot at this, and college is a great experience. Find the things that you're interested in personally, and find a way to connect that into something you want to do in the future. But beyond that, or actually before that, you want to think about how you're going to cover all these costs. So this involves a lot of math, and maybe that's not everyone's strong suit, but to be quite honest, even if you're terrible at math, this isn't really hard to figure out. So BH is pretty much standard. Once you figure out what school you're going to go to, you should know exactly how much money you're going to get for BAH. You can be aware of the gap month, since we just told you about that. So take a look at your year, what it's going to look like, and decide how you're going to have to plan for those gap months. Just decide how long you're going to be in school. So going to community college can be a really great way to supplement your costs in California, and I think in many other states. If you're going to community college and you're a veteran, you're not going to pay for those classes you take, and so maximize that as much as you can. Like I said, if you can get all of your general education taken care of, and whatever you need to choose a major and transfer, get all that taken care of first, you can save yourself a lot of money, because you really have to think about it like this. So a class like, for example, maybe a science requirement, right? You have to take it. It's just unavoidable. That's something you have to do. So would you rather pay nothing for that class, or pay several $1,000s at a 2-year or a 4-year university for that same class requirement? So it doesn't matter where you take it, and that's something that's important to know in advance. You know, I tried my best to hang on as long as I could in community college before I transferred. And so that's really something you might want to take into, you know, personal account. And even though, so I want you to think about it like this, right? So you could save a lot of money that way, and you could also, you know, save a lot of GI Bill funds. You still have other expenses. So no matter where you're at, you still have to plan for that. So, you know, you're still going to have to pay rent. There's a lot of ways that you can avoid that. So, you know, obviously you can stay with friends or family. And if that's something that's comfortable for you, it's not a bad way to start off. That way, when you get to your 4-year university, you've spent much less on those kind of expenses. So just kind of keep an eye on out of pocket. You know, nobody's asking you to never spend a single dime on anything fun. That's not what we're saying here, but we do want you to kind of, you know, keep in mind that you have a goal ahead of you, and part of that means that you have to save for that goal. So this is something that I used in the military, and you know, this isn't necessarily something that anyone is making sure you know, right? So tuition assistance is something that's available to you while you're in the military. So getting this information to folks who are still in the military is really important. You know, I hope that most people do find out about this. You know, I was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and they actually had classes from the local community college on base. So it made it a lot easier. And even then, the community college was really close to the base as well. But, you know, I used my tuition assistance to take some online classes when I wasn't deployed. And, you know, I also took some community college courses that I needed. So all these kinds of things can add up. So, you know, a lot of people are in for 4 years, and they can use that military tuition assistance while they're in. And something as simple as say you took a few classes and you have 12 units to transfer with. That's, you know, that's no small amount of an accomplishment when you go to community college, because that can save you a lot of time, right? So you can expedite in a lot of ways your path through college if you continue to stay focused on what benefits are in front of you. So, you know, really just be aware of what's available to you. A lot of this is just about resources. A lot of this is about connecting with other vets and just asking questions. So one of the things I always say is to be your own advocate, and then to find your advocates. So those are the two things you have to really keep in mind. When you have people looking out for you, it makes your life a lot easier. And when you're looking out for yourself, that's the same thing, right? You get your needs met and you can continue on. So this is pretty much what I covered earlier, but yeah, just think about these things early on before you transfer, right? So, you know, do your best to maximize that time. We've kind of covered this earlier, but what we didn't cover necessarily was childcare. So this can be a real challenge for a lot of people too. Like I said, a lot of veterans do have families. So find out if there are resources on your campus for that. A lot of community colleges do have child development classes and stuff like that, so they do need to get some experience with children. And so I know there are campuses that have free childcare for people, just all students. It's not just veterans. So it's something to look into. I mean, I can't guarantee that it's going to be something that's available at your campus, but it's definitely something you could discover, right? And even beyond that, again, you know, be your own advocate. And if these things don't exist, bring that to people's attention. Find the right people who are willing to, you know, ally with you, but also find those people that are making those decisions. Childcare is really important. We want everyone to have an opportunity to get through college, and things like this can really limit their opportunities to do so. So one of the things that I've noticed, and this isn't just veterans, this is students in general, there's real risk involved in taking on too much. So, you know, take a normal course load, right? Don't take 20 units or something. I mean, you're all human at the end of the day, and you all have your limits, and you don't want to exceed your limits if you can help it. I know with veterans, there's a sort of mentality that you can do anything. You know, there's no challenge too large, but I'm here to tell you, you know, everybody has a breaking point, and we want to avoid that because you want to have that longevity through your educational career so that you can actually accomplish your goals. So one way to do that is, you know, take your time. College isn't a race, okay? A lot of people look at it that way. College isn't a race. Maybe just because you got out of the military, you're mid-20s, maybe a little older, you might think, oh, I've lost time, but you actually have not lost any time. You've been doing great things. You've been learning a lot about yourself and the world. So those are all, you know, great things to be proud of. So enjoy school, you know, enjoy that time in college. You know, it's great to learn about, you know, new cultures, points of view, you know, make friends, be active, do what you want to do, but you don't have to feel like you're in a race. So don't rush to the finish line is what I'm saying. We did cover a couple of these things already, but it's worth reiterating. I guess if I could say this over and over again, it wouldn't be a terrible thing. Apply for those scholarships and grants, right? Book stipends. Okay, here's another area, right? So they won't necessarily cover all of your costs. So there's been a lot of really great ways to kind of survive this somewhat of a disaster when it comes to buying books. Because the reality is, if you're buying, you know, a book for a literature course, there's a good chance that it's not going to be very expensive, or that you can find it in the library, or you can go pick up a cheap copy at the bookstore. But for some books, specialized books for science, for example, or the medical field, or technology, so engineering courses that you might have to take, those books can be incredibly expensive, so hundreds of dollars sometimes. So I know that some veterans in the Veteran Resource Center have, you know, started a book sharing club. So they say, hey, I've got this, you know, book for the biology course. Do you want to borrow it? Or hey, let's meet up and we can study together. And that way we understand the material better and we can share the book and not have to go buy a new one, right? Aside from that, you know, recycling, reusing things is important. So there's a lot of ways to find great deals on books online as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. Another thing that I try to mention this just because I want to see it happen again. But at USF, University of San Francisco, where I went to school, I think it was the VFW was, you know, kind of supplementing some of the funds, right, for veterans who are on campus. I don't know if they still do this, but I thought that was really great. So you prove your veteran status, and they help to kind of give you a discount on the books. So programs like that, I'm sure they're easy to replicate. You can do it yourself, find people in the community who are willing to donate. So do that. Paid internships, fellowships, work study, all of these things. So, you know, VA has a work study program. Do you use that, okay? The reason is one thing that people don't necessarily consider during their time in school, and because they're busy too, so it's understandable. Those times that you're doing internships, if you're making money doing it, that's great. Fellowships in the same way, you know, and work study, it helps to kind of supplement that income, right? Because we told you already, the GI Bill is not necessarily going to cover all your expenses. So if you can do something like that, maybe a limited workload, but still provide you some kind of income, those things can be really great. Beyond that, though, it gives you a lot of experience. So I'm very happy that I did an internship when I was in college, because it really teaches you about what the career field looks like, you know, what a professional work environment looks like and things like that. So definitely take advantage of that. And this one is, last but not least, the most important. make sure you apply for your service-connected compensation benefits. I've seen so many veterans not take advantage of this. And the reality here is that this can help you immensely while you're in college. I will admit to you personally, I did not take advantage of this early on, and I wish I had, because I did have some difficulty financially when I was in college. If you go and apply for these benefits, you can get some supplemental income there as well. And that just takes, a lot of stress off of you. Ultimately, you want to do whatever you can to be smart and minimize your stress. Finances is a huge stressor for most people. So applying for the VA compensation benefits, it's not a handout. I know a lot of people feel that way. You earned it, okay? So take advantage of it. And also, another thing is that, you can link yourself into VA healthcare. And VA healthcare is critical. I tell you what, VA healthcare has been a huge part of my life, and it's one of the things that's helped me to be stabilized and productive. It's a nice thing to not have to worry about paying for medicine, right? So consider those things. The military can be very rough on your body, on your mind, and so those are things that you want to have some sort of care for.
Hey, Victor, we have a few questions that came in if you have time to answer.
Yeah, I do.
So a couple came in about books. So someone asked about renting books. And then someone also made a comment that you can also check in with the VRCs on campus, that many have a library of books to sign out and they are current. So that's a good resource to know about. And then someone also asked about California state level benefits used in conjunction with the GI Bill. Someone else sent out a link to CalVet's resources, but perhaps maybe you can touch on some of the community college level benefits and other benefits that CalVet offers.
Yeah, so essentially, and I took advantage of this, and I did describe it briefly. When I was in college, it was called the BOG fee waiver, but it was a fee waiver for veterans. And this was actually a really interesting experience because I was sitting in one of my classes, and this woman just basically darted into the room, and she said, "Do we have any veterans in the class?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Fill out this form." And I was like, "Okay." And she's like, if you fill this out, you won't have to pay fees for college here. And so that was a really direct way of getting my attention, and it worked. I was, I think, the only veteran in the class at the time, but things like that can really help a lot. And we're really fortunate in the state of California, and like I said before, I know there are other states that do similar programs to have these kind of provisions, because it's a huge relief, right, to not have to pay for courses while you're in community college. You still have other expenses that you've got to account for. So if you can, use your GI Bill benefits, incrementally as you're going through, you can still have some GI Bill benefits left when you're even in grad school. And I had about, I think, a month or so left of benefits when I got to grad school. So yeah, so thanks for sharing that. Link in the chat. We appreciate that. We're glad to hear about those book lending options as well. Those are really important, and that has a lot to do with your community, right? So you have a community of veterans, and ultimately you do whatever you can to establish yourselves as a community, and decide what you can do to help each other. And that kind of leads into what we're talking about now. So, how do you get connected? One way you can get connected is to connect with other veterans, but there's a lot of other things to consider. So one things that we noticed in colleges is there's this kind of, I don't want to call it a marketing thing. I don't want to call it anything else. I'll just say that universities do say, we're veteran friendly. And so what does that mean, right? And so we hope that it means that the college is friendly towards veterans, obviously accepting of their experience, that they have services. This is the most important thing for me. So if you're going to prove to me that you're a veteran-friendly campus, you're going to show me that you have services for those veterans. Okay, so that could be everything from a space for them to meet, talk with one another, plan and organize and help each other out, to you know, some other service on campus, like some of the things that we described. So maybe you know, a discount on books or something like that, right? So there's a number of services that can take place there. You know, getting connected, like I said, when you're trying to acquaint yourself with university life, you need to find that person that's going to be your advocate, and one of those people is your academic advisor. Get in front of them, you know, take the time to meet, and you know, let them know what you want to do. Okay, they can really orient you in the right direction, save you a lot of time. Some folks, they get into college, they just take, you know, they take classes and they don't know whether or not they're going to really benefit them. They're just kind of exploring, which is great. And, you know, it kind of leads to what I said earlier about, you know, don't race, right, through your experience. If you want to take some fun classes and learn how to do something new, that's great. You know, try it out, have fun. But ultimately, you're gonna have to have a plan, right, for your academic coursework. So sitting down with an academic advisor, getting a direction. I know once I got you know, opportunity to sit down with my academic advisor, he kind of just sat down with me and laid everything out, all the way to my four-year university, in fact. And I thought that that was really great. He said, here's your classes you need to take while you're here. You need to have this many units to transfer to this school if you want to go there. I think I gave him at that time 3 different options that I wanted to try out. And so I was ready to go. By the time I was done, you know, filling out that long list that he gave me, you know, I transferred no problem. So those people are one of your earliest advocates. Meet with them, make a plan, and figure out where you want to go. So one of the things that maybe people don't consider is, you know, delays happen. So sometimes they're administrative, sometimes we may not necessarily understand is that we can cause those delays too. So if we don't fill out a form the right way, if we don't turn something in on time, all those things can help to delay our payments. So it's your money, and consider that you don't want to delay your payments. As we told you before, those things can really put a damper on your ability to function financially. So you want to make sure that you take care of that stuff. A lot of veteran resource centers, you know, they sit down with each other and, you know, they fill out the forms, and that way everything is squared away before they send it over to the certifying official. And believe me, your certifying official will appreciate this greatly, because whatever you can do to make their life easier is definitely a plus. And so that also means that everyone who's filling out that paperwork in the proper way is helping to keep things from bottlenecking somewhere and causing delays for other people. So with veteran resource centers, having, you know, been to several of them over the last few years, these are some of the real frontline staff that are out there advocating for veterans. They care about you. They want to see you. They want to get to know you. And they want you to be engaged at the Veteran Resource Center. And they want to let you know what kind of supports are available on your campuses. So definitely, if you're going to get connected, connect to them, okay? Veterans, like I said before, if you're building a community, even if it's small, sometimes on campuses there's not that many veterans. It's just a fact. Hopefully you can find each other. So seek those people out and find a way to get together and find ways to really change the campus for veterans. Hopefully make it better. Yeah, disability and support services. Some people don't necessarily take advantage of this. You know, just come out and say that it has to do with, you know, pride in some ways, and maybe feeling like, you know, I don't want to be seen as broken or something like that, or I don't want to have people knowing my business. You know, if it's your private life, I completely understand that, but just understand, much like what we talked about earlier, you need to do your best to reduce your stress. You have to manage it yourself. Nobody's really going to do that for you. People might give you tools that'll help you do that, but nobody's necessarily going to do it for you. So with these kind of accommodations, you can get a lot of, you know, things kind of provided to you so that you will be able to do better in class, right? So I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to have more time for homework or tests, right? If you have difficulty being in a large classroom, and sometimes maybe you need to step out for a second. It's better for the teacher to be aware of that than to kind of have some sort of misinterpretation of that event, right? So if you step out of the classroom and they're not sure why, they might think you just don't want to be in class and you just left for no reason, right? Sometimes you might just have to leave without telling them anything. But if you have accommodation letters and things like that, it kind of keeps people informed without them knowing too much information about you. And that gives you the power to kind of self-disclose as you choose, right? I was open with a lot of my professors over the years, and I felt like personally that helped out a lot because they were receptive to my experience, and they respected that and they tried to support me, and it helped that they knew what was going on. So just keep that in mind. Managing finances, loans, and debt. So again, planning is a big part of this, and if folks in the military, I know you understand this, really making a plan, a strategy, right? You have a mission still, right, to get yourself through college. These things are kind of pretty familiar to you, I think. So make sure that you're focusing on keeping your budget together. A lot of the veterans that we talked to when we were doing our research said that they found that to be really key. People who didn't do that, and this is no surprise, I'm sure, had a really hard time. The less focus that you put on actually managing debt, developing a savings, making sure all your bills get paid on time, you're just going to have a hard time. It's a fact. So many people just didn't have the information. So this is something that people can use in your smaller communities, like I said, of veterans. Take some time to talk about finances, right? A lot of groups have weekly meetings. There's no reason why you can have someone who's really good at budgeting take the lead and say, hey, I'm going to tell everyone in our group a little bit about budgeting. I'm going to show you how to establish a budget and keep to it, whatever that is. You do encounter people who are just really good at it. So some people just happen to have that innate skill for that. I guess for this last point here is there's a danger, again, like I said before, about a risk involved when you don't make these plans. So if you can imagine, you take on some serious debts while you're in college, and you get out on the other side of that, and if you have thousands and thousands of dollars of debts, it's almost impossible to pay that off. And maybe you get out of college and you don't get a high-paying job. So the terrible thing about interest is that it's mathematically brilliant because it's definitely going to make someone rich, but probably not you. So you want to avoid at all costs those kinds of things if you can. There's different ways to do that, and I think we've covered a lot of that. Monthly and annual budget plans, we did cover this. So it's an easy way to start out, right? Just start with a monthly one first. If you're not really familiar with budget plans, keep track of your expenses. There's a ton of apps for this. Kind of makes it a lot easier for some people. Some people do it the old-fashioned way. They have a notebook or something. All of those kinds of things will work. You just really have to find out what's comfortable for you. Spreadsheets, I think personally, are a lot easier because you can categorize things, and it's locally stored on your computer. You don't have to worry about some server crashing somewhere, which makes your information safe and localized. So this may take a bit of time. Know that your spending is not going to be the same every month, but when you start to keep track of it, almost everyone realizes that there's something that they're wasting money on that they don't really need, right? Going to Starbucks every day, spending $5 on a cup of coffee, you could have made one at home for like 25 cents. Yes, so with bills and debts, of course, you want to make those the number one priority. Rent, obviously, that's got to be the number one. Make sure you do that first. Then think about your other debts, right? Your car bill, your insurance. okay, and then all the other ancillary expenses that you might have. Emergency savings, this kind of comes as no surprise, I'm sure, but having some sort of emergency savings can really help out a lot. I try to do this as best as I can, even if it's only a couple $100s. So imagine, 1 month things got a little rough and, you're short a couple $100 to pay one of your bills. Then you remember, oh, I put some money in savings, and then you can cover it, right? If you don't have that emergency safety net there, you can't do those things. And yes, of course, there are a lot of ways to do this a little more, spend a little more time on this. There's tons of courses online for free. Typically, you can ask for specialists to help you. These are all ways that you can avoid kind of falling into a trap. So with student loans, of course, these are rather large. One of the things to consider. It's easy enough if you're in a tough spot to want to take out a loan, right? So the first thing to understand is that you don't have to always take out a loan. You get that choice. And I would say that it's smarter to actually, shop around for interest rates, right? Like I said, those can be a bit devastating. So you want to make sure that you're getting your best, deal for what you're getting yourself into. Make sure you're not looking at, dangerous loans, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this is something you have to also, factor in, because you want to have a schedule of repayment, and you want to hopefully pay it off on time and get it off of your, get it out of your life at some point and not have to worry about it anymore. Again, here, a loan is a loan, meaning, it's something that does accrue interest over time. It's not like someone's just giving you money and doesn't expect anything back. You have to make sure that you're really prepared for that. And additionally, it is easy to take too much out, right? If you're already in a hard situation and you think, well, I don't want to take out, too little, because then I don't know if I'll have enough to cover everything. So be smart. Don't take out too much. And, that's the reasoning behind that, is that you're going to have to pay it back. And you want to keep your debt manageable, no matter what kind of debt that is. So if it's a loan especially, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to your ability to repay. Yes, so again, like I kind of pointed to earlier, make sure that you're doing your homework on this. There's tons of places online that you can go to find comparisons on different rates, different interest rates. A lot of websites that will help you apply for a credit card, for example, and get you a good rate. So there's tons of ways to do this. It really boils down to just being smart about what you're doing. You do have to have credit to survive in this world, but you would hope that you have good credit, because if you have bad credit, it's actually going to make things a lot more difficult for you. So bad debt, right? We talked about this. Well, I kind of just teased it a bit, but predatory lenders, especially these payday loans, just avoid them at all costs. Unfortunately, there's been a pretty pervasive, marketing strategy towards, military folks, for-profit schools. Many bases, of course, are, rampant with payday loans. They're a scam. There's no nice way to put it. Don't even go there. Just stay away, run away if you have to. Yeah, do that. So again, now what? So what do you even do now, right? So you've gotten all this information, and I hope it's been helpful, but are you going to be able to make this plan, break it down, and really get through school successfully? The answer to that is yes. Okay, so don't overcomplicate things for yourself. What you really need to do is just take step by step, look at where you want to be, and especially with your finances, it's really important. If you really kind of simplify it down to its component parts, you're going to be a lot better off in the long run. Just kind of diving in feet first is typically not a good strategy. of course, this is about your life, right? So you want to come out of college with a solid, grounded, perspective, and hopefully financially stable, uh, place. You want to be in that place where you can get a good job and hopefully find a place to live and move forward with your life. But that's all going to depend on you. And so the importance there is pretty high. You want to do your best to make your life the best that it can be. Definitely, lean on the advice of others. I have been very fortunate to have mentors in my life, so seek people like that out. For me, these were most often older veterans, so folks had been around for a while, had established themselves in their career, and they're the ones that'll tell you, hey, be careful about this, or what, if you really want to do this type of career, you should look into this school or something like that. There's always people that are willing to help you, so find out who those people are. So that's gonna be it. However, we do have a few minutes if anyone has additional questions. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time, and I'm here for you. So let me know if I can answer something for you.
Thanks so much, Victor. We did have a couple of questions come through. So any advice on getting computers during school? And then also, if you are permanently disabled, you can get forgiveness on federal student loans, not just veterans. Someone did respond about laptop buying connections, that some schools have laptop buying connections that are more affordable for students attending. And then also some students can get discounted laptops through their schools, but that's not a uniform process. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I just got used computers most of the time. That was the easiest thing for me to do. Some of these laptops has gotten so affordable, it's kind of unreal. So something that's like, it's not going to be like a fancy computer, but something you can do your work on. So I'm not advocating for any particular products or companies, but I will say that, for example, Google does have a line of devices, so their Chromebooks are rather inexpensive. Something like that can be a good go-to, and I know a lot of students do use those. So that's one thing. Just look for deals. If you go online, there's always that option to get something used. eBay, other websites like that, or Amazon often have deals.
Okay, and then we have one more minute, so I'm going to cut you off there. There's another question about if you know about any resources on campuses for first generation veterans.
That's not something that I'm really sure of, and that's actually a really interesting question. So that's something I'll have to look into. But
yeah, we do know that, I mean, up to 62% of student veterans are first generation students. I know that there are, if you just look like campus specific, there are a lot of leadership programs, orientation training camps for first generation students that we can maybe link to after this webinar when we send the follow-up email. But that was a really good question.
yeah, thank you for that. And just kind of as a last bit, don't be afraid to reach out to us at any point. My email is available to you. I get questions all the time from student vets, and I'm happy to help people out. Even if there was some situation where you needed a mentor, reach out to me and let me know. I'm definitely, I think anyway, a good resource for people. So just feel free to email us and ask questions after this. Okay, thanks.